Guests this morning here in studio, we've got Daniel Yoder. Did I get that right, Dan?
You did get that right.
And do you like Dan or Daniel?
We can go with Dan. Saves time.
Okay. I mean, which do you prefer?
Oh, Dan's fine.
Daniel fought the Lions, you know.
That's true. I don't want people to get confused. Confused with him.
That's okay. So. You want to introduce the guys to your right and our left?
Absolutely. So,
roll, please.
Right next to me is Brock Lammers, and he's playing Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. And
you lucky guy, you.
Good morning.
And then right to his right is Palmer Huff, and he's playing Antonio Salieri. So I got my two heavy hitters here with me today.
You want to tell us more about your heavy hitters?
Yeah. So I've worked with both of these guys quite a few times.
Don't sugarcoat
it. Oh my.
No, they've been putting in quite a bit of work. This is a tough show for actors, and they've got some tough parts, really demanding parts, especially the Salieri part, not to diminish the Mozart part at all. But
feel free.
yeah, they've been definitely working hard. There's a lot of lines to memorize, and there's a lot of emotion, a lot of feeling to convey, and there's a lot of words in this show. So finding a way to keep the audience engaged is really important, and I think they're definitely going to do that.
Is there a lot of Mozart music in this?
There is. There's a lot of Mozart music. There's other music as well. There's a, God, what did you say we had? 60-some sound cues? Brock over here is doing our sound design too, so.
Jiminy crickets, why does he have time to have a life?
A life? What's that? that is what all this work is.
That's the life.
The performances are this Friday, Saturday, 7:30, a Sunday afternoon matinee, the only matinee this Sunday.
That's
right?
correct.
And then the following Thursday through Saturday at the Paradise Center for the Arts. People can grab those tickets. Noon to 5, the box office is open Tuesday through Saturday and until 8 o'clock Thursday night. And can they get these online now? That's a new feature, right?
They can get them online now.
How cool is that?
Moving into the 21st century.
Yeah, we certainly are talking about the... This takes place in the
18th century. 18th century,
yeah,
yep,
yeah.
End of 18th century.
I was just looking up. I didn't realize that Mozart was, well, kind of a different dude.
Yeah, he was a little bit different. People think he was a genius. He had a very high IQ.
Well, in terms of music, he was, yes.
Yeah. He was kind of on the cusp of a new order of music, really. I mean, he kind of revolutionized music in his time. I don't know. Do you like
in kind of the same way that even modern musicians and composers and artists do in the same way. You know, when they make a big splash and affect things, may be seen negatively or just strongly in that time, but the longevity is there. You see that they really drove something greater, that took time to flourish, that maybe wasn't seen in the moment.
I was just going to say...
Whether we're talking about a Prince or a Bowie in the rock and roll world or the Beatles,
So
Rolling
he was not
Stones.
the Elvis Presley of his time. By that I mean crowds didn't swoon to see Mr. Mozart. Or did they?
They did. I mean, he was so fashionable that the main reason he moved around Europe like he did was that these different royalties wanted him. They wanted to show him off and show their culture by having in this great new artist. The problem is that historically his social graces were not as refined, and he usually offended somebody at some point.
I also think the main point was that orchestral music and concert music was really burgeoning at that point, where when Beethoven came along, it was a little more popular. It was for the people, as opposed to being folk music for the people and then this stratified, aristocratic, very nose up in the air. And Mozart was all about that. He's very kind of punk in that way.
Okay. We're talking about Amadeus being performed this weekend and next weekend. Did you choose this? Does the board choose this and come to you, or how does that work?
So the Paradise Community Theater asked me to submit some shows for this season, and I submitted 3 of them, and this was one of them. This was definitely the most challenging of the 3 shows I had submitted, so I didn't think I was good that they would ask me to do this one, but they did end up asking me to do it, and I don't know, I was pretty excited. This is my first show as a director, so I just couldn't pass the challenge up. And when I read the script, it really leapt out at me. There were a lot of amazing moments I just saw in my mind that I could imagine on stage, and a lot of those have actually stuck with me, and I've been able to incorporate them into the show. So, yeah, it's been a ride. It's been a challenge, but I am really excited to be doing it, and I'm excited to be working with the wonderful cast and crew that I have as well. We've got some really talented people.
Now, Palmer's done a lot of directing. Have you done any directing, Brock?
I have musically directed one Rocky Horror Show in the
That's right, I
last
remember
fall.
that now. Yeah.
Yep, we came in here and chatted with you, and then I directed one act, End of the Winter. One act in our what was it? A Night of One Acts. Yep.
So when you've directed and now you're acting, are you tempted
I'm always tempted, but tempted by what?
to do? To do some directing while you're, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you'd see the glances that I get right when I start to open my mouth, it's, I am put in my place. I think, that happens to all of us. Palmer's probably a little bit better at it, knowing when the right time to give feedback or opinions on things.
Yes, I've learned how to bite my tongue. Just, I've got enough on my plate. I'm not worried about directing this show. I've got plenty on my plate, thanks.
Are you intimidated at all because these guys have directed and this is your first show, or?
There's an element of knowing that some of the people up on stage may know better than you, but that's part of being the director too, is taking charge and making the mistakes, making them your own, and because it is such a creative process when you're putting one of these shows on, and it's been really nice in some ways to have people who have experience, who have the input. I don't know how to do everything, and so it's nice to be able to access their knowledge and get their input and incorporate that into how I want the show to be. So, there's always more to learn, and it's been a learning curve on this show. But I just kind of put it out of mind. I just yell at them and tell them what to do, and they do it. And once that happens, then I don't worry about it anymore.
And as an actor, you like directors who want input, right?
Not always. I like a director who wants you to find the character, and is open to ideas that you may have about the character, but I don't believe in the conflict that you can create by going up and saying, if I was directing this, I would have put this person here and moved this and done that.
Right.
Because that's not fair to the director trying to learn, and that's one of the things that we want in Paradise Community Theater. We want new people to come in. We want them to try it. We want them to feel comfortable expressing their idea and their vision. If they want to come to a member that's got experience and say, I'm having problems with this, can you give me some input, then that's where that part comes in. But you don't just bully them, because that just makes it an unappealing job or position to be in. And I've known of other theater companies where, if you cast a director, you're stuck with a co-director, and that's not fair. I mean, it blurs the vision.
You may limit some of the creative freedom that you never know what's going to come out, or what's going to happen. So whether we've directed one show or many, you never know what somebody's going to bring to the table. It's the process that they build, organizational process, the way it functions, but the creativity and the sparks, you never know what's going to come out. And Palmer and the rest of them, the wonderful people, everybody down at Paradise has been great at that, fostering that in their own directorial way. It's kind of this stratified, them helping us help everyone, and it becomes this strong community. Helps us build and grow ourselves and theater.
Outside of all the lines, why is this so difficult?
Well, it's kind of unconventional in a few ways from a staging standpoint. There's not traditional scene changes in the show. The action's constantly going on. The lights, there's only one blackout in the entire show. Palmer's character Salieri is on stage the entire time throughout all of this, so he's really driving the inter-scene action. There's a lot of technical challenges with the show. Dealing with the scene changes and just getting light, you have to sync the lighting and the sound up and all this stuff to all these events that are going on, and keeping the show fast-paced, keeping the audience engaged. That's really kind of the name of the game there.
So is this a typecast, a genius?
Well, he is a musician, so I felt that that would help out a little bit.
You didn't answer the question.
I don't know. This is actually the first role he's played on stage for a little while. This is definitely
for quite a while.
I don't know what kind of typecasting I would do. You know, it was because he was a musician, I really wanted to kind of harness some of the passion, because
Right.
Mozart is so passionate about the music, and I knew he'd be able to embrace that, and he really has, which has been good.
Well, obviously, people of our generation really don't know Mozart, so you could create a character, right? You could create the person, Mozart.
Correct. At least infuse maybe something that modern peers or, you know, just our generation or our culture could tap into, something they could relate to. Infused with that spirit and passion of art and communication through a creative fold, you know, which I see as art and what we're doing. Try to connect with people on different levels and tap into something that is a greater human experience.
And a lot of music of today based on some of the music of this time, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. In varying ways. I mean, it's all a long ladder of history that builds up from then till now, and yeah, you definitely see analogies and histories within what we hear today.
So I'm going to ask Palmer this, because we chatted about this before going on the air. How close are the play and the movie to each other? Because both were written by Mr. Schaefer, right?
Right. As I've found, the movie was almost written as a piece to say, hey, here's Antonio Salieri. He's probably the worst human being that ever lived. He took a musical genius and destroyed it. The play approaches and makes him a human being and actually shows a side that any human being would experience. You're confronted with, as Brock says, it's a passion. Salieri had a passion for music, and at a point in the play admits he's not creative. And then here comes this upstart who's 6 years younger than him, who's been thrilling Europe, and in a half an instant can do everything that Salieri has strived to do his whole life, and he can do it without thinking about it. So the jealousy is more portrayed on a human level, and the conflict that arises in oneself with that proposition of you control a man's destiny that is your biggest rival. How are you going to treat him? And what are you going to do about it? And are you willing to face the consequence at the end of what you choose? So, I mean, to me, this version, Schaefer made Salieri much more human.
I find it interesting that the same guy writes both.
Yeah, and he actually, there's a long forward at the beginning of the actual script when you read through, and he talks about how he's gone through, you know, there's the film version, and he actually has rewritten the play several times since it originally premiered. Is it?
We're on six.
Six, yeah. So 6 times since 1979. It's just this work that you can't quite get away from, and you know, that's kind of interesting in and of itself, because it's this creative process that's constantly in motion, constantly evolving, and there is, you know, in this version we're doing, I really like the humanity of the characters. You're kind of taking away the myths and legends to a certain extent and really humanizing them, and it seems like that was what Peter Schaefer was always kind of trying to find within the play scripts, especially, not so much the film one, but within the stage plays, it's like he was always trying to distill these characters down a little bit more, especially the conflict between Mozart and Salieri. That's kind of the heart of it, and it really drives the show.
So there's a lot of emotion in this show.
Absolutely.
Yes.
and you know, legends and heroes can only take you so far, and we want to strip that away a little bit to give that relatability to it.
This isn't stuffy at all.
No, we, you know, you hear Mozart, Salieri, classical music,
Right.
kind of think, it's going to be kind of dry and boring, and it's really not. We've worked really hard to create a really engaging experience. You know, people are really into the period pieces today and the long form drama, and that this has all of it. As you know, Palmer was saying earlier, we got comedy, we've got drama, we got a little bit of romance. And all of this mystery and intrigue going on, and you know, the play really, once you get into it, it starts to clip along, and the story is really engaging, and the characters, you just get drawn into them, and the actors have been doing a really good job of really fleshing these characters out, and not just, I think it's really easy sometimes to kind of go for a cliche on how the actors are, and they've done a really good job, and I've been trying to push them to really find all of the emotional aspects that they can out of these characters. I really, you know, the goal is to really keep the audience, you know, really engaged with the characters throughout.
You guys know how tickets are doing?
They're doing all right. Again, I think there's that hesitation because people start to go, oh, classical music, that's so stuffy. And the thing that, when I was in orchestra back ages ago in school, I had an orchestra teacher that sat there and said, you know, we're going to do the Carmen blah, blah, blah from Barber of Seville. And I was sitting there and I honestly went, what are you talking about? And the lead cello player looks over at me and goes, killed a rabbit, killed a... And I went, oh, from that. Okay, so I knew the piece, I just didn't know its true name. And part of it is that people will come in, and we have Mozart pieces, we have other composers. If they sit there and they listen to this music, they're going to go, wait a minute, I know that piece, I know that song. Well, yeah, you do know it, because like Brock said, the influences from then came forward. They're part of music today. Salieri has a line, he's talking about how there's crushed harmony, there's glancing collisions of music and the notes and how finely written it is. Well, that's the same kind of thing where I'm not a big Prince fan, but musically he wrote a new script how music could be written and performed. Mozart did that in 81, and rewrote music in about 3 years. And the ideals, and took it to the masses, and didn't just have it in the courts and in the Royal Opera. It went down to the people, and simple tunes, simple notes that anybody else nowadays goes, well, that isn't that impressive. But you look at the book of work of everyone around him, and it was entirely different than what they had believed in. So it's a little slow, but I also think that people just need to swallow that fear and say, you know what, it's a human piece. It's about human interaction, and it's a story fantasized a little bit, but based loosely on historical evidence. And again, it's almost a mystery to the way it's written. And if you come to the show, you'll find out why I say that, because within the first 2 minutes of dialogue, you'll understand what the mystery is about.
Plus, his music puts out emotion, does it not?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's why I think this piece works sort of in a meta way, that he was a stage writer. He was a theatrical person. He loved to write for the stage. He worked on one of the most challenging but also most lucrative art forms, opera at the time. And he loved to show that drama in that form, the music and the words and the acting, everything together to try to express and tap into something. And so his music shines in this theatrical light. It's very operatic in its own way. Yeah, there's a lot of, human emotion is difficult to show and put out and write for people to understand, and finding different perspectives and different ways to show that. Combining all of the senses, all the ranges of human emotion.
And your character, Mozart, then the dialogues, he actually has lines that speak straight to the heart of the matter. The writing the quartet into quintet into sextet into that dialogue. It's one of his monologues, and it's very moving to listen to it, because he basically lays out, and Schaeffer wrote it well. I don't know if Mozart ever said it, but it's a well-stated line in his monologue, and it makes you, and I just find myself going, okay, that makes sense. What he's saying makes sense. I couldn't do it, but it makes complete sense.
Mm-hmm.
And we have those moments in the dialogue where he touches on the humanity of music and why are we writing for the court when we should be writing for the people? We shouldn't be doing this, we should be doing that. And it's that whole thing. He's walking into a room, dropping a hand grenade in the middle of it, and everybody's going, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And yet he proved time and time again you can do it.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing I've taken out of it is listening, because you have to listen as an actor more than just for your lines, but if you truly start listening to the dialogues, the emotion and the passion in those lines creates that and conveys it to the audience. So it's not dry and stuffy. It makes you sit there in the audience and go, wow. Mm-hmm. I never thought of music in that way, but it makes perfect sense what he just said.
It's written really well in the sense that I think it leaves the question, for me, one of the exciting parts is it leaves the question of why. With our music, why do we listen to music? Why do we enjoy it? What is it about it? It's a kind of rhetorical question. It's open-ended. You know, we put out in the world and we create things, but also what are we listening to? What are we taking in? How does it affect us?
I can't even imagine a world without music. Can you?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely not. I wouldn't have a life or a job or any interests.
But I mean, seriously, at one time there was no music.
But archaeologists or whatever, paleontologists, the people, they said that man has always done something, whether it be rhythmically beating on a trunk or banging rocks together.
Or listening to our heartbeat.
Right. It's been a rhythmic cycle for music, and it's when man moved away from, well, the heartbeat does it this way, but what if I added an extra beat in there, and then it changed and it evolves out of that. So man's always looked for that rhythmic pulse to follow.
And not even rhythmic, melodic. Listening to the whale call, listening to the baby cry, listening to the mother sing the child to sleep. These are all very deep-seated roots, and tapping into that line is very crucial.
How many cast members in Amadeus?
I believe I quoted us at 10.
I think 10.
Yeah, 10. And the show actually is constructed so that you can have a pretty large cast of extras and so forth to fill it out. The Paradise stage is a little bit smaller, and so we kind of took out a lot of the extras. And it's nice. It's a nice, intimate show. It feels like it moves along a little quicker, and I don't know, I feel like it gives more of an opportunity to really showcase the main characters and to really bring them to the forefront. So, yeah, it's not a huge cast. Pretty nice to work with all of them. They've been, really great. I've worked with most of the people, almost everyone that's in the cast I've worked with before, and so that's made it a lot easier as a first-time director to come in and kind of have these relationships and you don't have to work at getting to know the people quite so much right away. You can just kind of dive in and get to working on the characters and on the show.
So when the show first came up, obviously you suggested it.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the guy you had in mind for Mozart?
It was funny. I sat around a lot and thought about who I wanted to play these parts, and it was hard to visualize a lot of the characters right away about who I actually would want to be. And I thought he would make a good Mozart, and I definitely encouraged him to try out. Especially, like I said before, because as a musician, I knew there was going to be that passion there, because Mozart he's just driven by this need and this passion for music, as is Salieri in a different way, and that's kind of the dynamic between the two of them, is they both are, but they both have different capability levels. And as far as Salieri is concerned, that was a part I had no idea who I was going to put in it. I think it's the most challenging role I've ever seen as someone involved in theater.
Now, why is that? Why is it so challenging?
It has a lot of lines to memorize, a lot of very large monologues, and those are always difficult because, you want to keep the audience engaged. And Salieri actually breaks that fourth wall. He talks directly to the audience a lot of times. He is the conduit through which the audience is engaged in the show. And so, it's a challenge to keep people with you as you're talking and talking and talking. And he goes from being an old man to a young man. There's all these transitions. He runs, Salieri really runs the gamut of emotions throughout the show, too. It's I don't know, it's kind of a a clinic on acting, you know, when you have to play Salieri. And Palmer was at tryouts. I was super thrilled, and he came in and did a read for me on one of those monologues, and I really liked what I saw. And he's stepped up to the plate. You know, it's if I was playing the part, I would definitely be having a difficult time getting myself around it. So it's kudos to him that he has been willing to take on this great challenge.
But you did say earlier, Palmer, you can relate to this guy. You can understand why he'd be jealous.
Well, I can, because I'm not an expert at directing. I've got friends that are directors as well, and I feel like I put in a lot of time and effort, and I watch other people that can seem to walk into a room and just, boom, it's there. And it's a jealousy, but it's not a resentful jealousy. It's an awe. And I found that with Salieri, as I'm riding that fine line between his awe of Mozart and his actual he despises the man for his ability. But he rides that wave, and that he's back and forth. He's in awe, but yet he's repelled at the same time.
Well, I've only got a few seconds left of the show. Some days the show isn't long enough. Today, I think, is one of them. Tickets can be purchased again online now. Online, you can go to the ParadiseCenterForTheArts.org website. Great website, ParadiseCenterForTheArts.org. Guys, have yourself a great show the next couple of weekends.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cody. We'll be looking out there for you.
Amadeus, Tony Award-winning and Academy Award-winning Amadeus. It's going to be awesome. So make sure you get there this weekend and next weekend at the Paradise Center for the Arts.